Good afternoon, everyone. So this is Chart Sniper again, doing stocks analysis for the upcoming week. And I already kind of created a video on indices and crypto analysis this morning. So make sure you check it out. So let's get started right away with reviewing some of the stocks that we discussed last week and then how they did. Okay. So let's start with um, DOL3. So DOL3 had earnings last week, and if you can see and appreciate how well the technicals are respected here, there was a gap fill at 106.63 just the day before earnings. I got out of my options trade there, and earnings had more than the implied move. So it's kind of gave up a lot of profits, and that was probably a inverted head and shoulders, and it's resolving lower. So 3 days rule, not touching it in any way. So it might take some time for it to kind of consolidate. So let's not look that anymore. So the next thing was Snowflake. Did a lot of drama, and that pullback that happened there on last Friday gave it a lot of momentum to upside, and it's hit that resistance of 306 level, and let's see how it goes. As long as the earning gap holds, it stays constructive. I mean, in the long-term picture, right? In the long-term picture, when you see snow, it has a lot of catch-up to do, but for now, it is at a resistance level. But weekly trend is bullish, and it was a decent volume there on the earnings. So let's wait and see how it fills the gap, whether it even fills the gap or continues higher. So, but we have a range in place now. We have a 306 or 307 range and the earnings gap to play against. Splunk. Splunk earnings move was kind of neutral, so it did not go anywhere. It ends up being flat, and slowly it started moving higher. So again, in the long-term picture, there is a lot of potential for upside move, and the trend is bullish. The volume is decent on the earnings. So I think it's something, if you're long, stay long, and some levels to upside are 168 and 181. Whether you would want to initiate new position here, probably not. I mean, I'm overall overall the market wise, it's better to kind of wait for a pullback and buy on the dip than chase at this time. Weekly, 50 SMA, 156 is the resistance, and it has to prove itself by moving above that 156 for the next leg here. So let's think about it when it moves above 50 weeks average. Next one is INTU. So the earnings gap up and then end up being flat. So I was on a iron condor there, and it worked out perfectly. And for the week, it expired worthless. But looks like we have that level set, and in the long-term picture, it has hit that resistance level. And with no turbo tax sales that might happen in the upcoming, and not much happening, it needs to consolidate a lot. So maybe it tries to go and check back and then give up quite a bit. So there is a lot of consolidation needed into it. So not a good idea to start adding here. Better wait for a pullback to probably at least 20 SMA to 540. If you are long, then you can trade all the way until this retest of this level safely. PANW. That was very nice. As I was discussing, the cup and handle formation that happened, and it kind of clearly broke that, and it looks like a power gap. Whenever you see this much gap, and there was no attempt to even fill it after the earnings. So this is a strong trend, and let's go and look at monthly. Yeah, it's a strong trend, and now that it crossed this level, it might target that level. But I've not looked into the earnings as such, but technically it looks strong. It feels very similar to, like, the power gap that happened in CMG gap. It never was even worrying about filling it up and chugged along higher. So into looking good, the PNW looking good. ULTA, I think it was a similar reaction as INTU. So there was a very big move to upside and then ended up being flat. Why this happens nowadays often is a lot of traders are trading options, and depending on the positioning of the big players into this rally, were they focusing on trying to sell a lot of options, or were they focusing on taking the stock higher, right? But again, if when there is a lot of big traders who sold the options, typically it ends up being flat. So that's why you need to understand how to not only buy calls or puts, which are directional. You need to understand how to trade iron condors and credit spreads, so that you can take a leverage of the hyped up volatility into earnings, and play on these neutralization trades to get a lot of profit out of that. Okay, so you're playing the big players game there by selling premiums than buying premiums. Okay, so yeah, it can chug along higher. After this, the weekly candle looks very, very sh strong, I think, and there is room for it all the way to 435. Nice looking strong trend there in Alta. So that's pretty much about some of the earnings that were there. And let's discuss some stocks where there are earnings upcoming this week, right? The first thing is DocuSign, a lot of room to upside to go on weekly, right? 337. The implied move for DocuSign, let me quickly check, is plus or minus $22. So from 300, we are expecting a move to upside to 322, or a move to downside to 278-ish. Okay, so looks like these two areas, 270 areas, will be a support, and with a potential upside of 322. So I like this name. I like the story of it. DocuSign. A lot of companies are using it. So looks the trend is constructive, except that pullback that happened, and that pullback might give some opportunity to take it higher. So 322 upside, maybe selling a put spread based on 270 might work out into earnings, or iron condor maybe 270, selling 270 put and selling 355 call might work as an iron condor. So the next one was that we have earnings is MDB. So I was in the trade of playing back to retest this one, and I exited the trade last week. But weekly looks pretty good. A very strong cup handle formation with room to go higher for 1-2 levels. So the implied move for MDB is plus or minus 32, which will take from 395 to approximately 420. Yeah, so let's mark that implied move. 395 plus 30 is 425-ish, right? So we'll be looking at this revisit of this previous level, that 425-ish to the upside, and then to the downside, the middle Bollinger Band 335-ish would be a decent support. So again, if you are inclined bullish into MDB earnings, um, I think playing for that move to test these levels back would be very nice, depending on whether you want to buy a call spread or sell a put spread. It's up to you, but I think it's looking good into the earnings. I mean, typically when this kind of breakout happens, right? When this kind of breakout happens, it is giving itself a room to go higher there or pull back and retest this level, right? So a reset of that kind of thing. So we never know what will be the result, but you can at least have a range of retesting this versus retesting that. So you can play for that range trade an iron condor, or depending on how much more happens even before earnings, right? So there are September 2nd is almost 3 days. So depending on how it is on the day of earnings, how much it rallied, depending on that, you need to adjust accordingly. So the next one that we have is Zoom. So Zoom, when you look at the long-term trend, right, it's did that big move, consolidation, bounce back, and now it kind of there is a downtrend line and there is a support uptrend line. So we are looking at 295 as a support on weekly basis, and the implied move is around $27. So uh, it might go to 367 or 370. So we are looking at a test back of this level, downtrend line 370-ish, or test back of this level. So with 295 as support and probably 400 as a logical resistance, unless it blows the earnings and it hits that 468 level. So we never know. A lot of people are using Zoom, and Delta variant has added advantage like a tailwind. I like that it pulled back into earnings. Yeah, I think it might hold this test of this level 295. Maybe selling a put spread might help there. And the next earnings is NTES. The IV is super high on this one. It's a That is China name, and as the China stocks bounced, it also bounced. So we never know. I don't typically play ADR stocks, which are China based, and I just wanted to mention that there is earnings out there. Nothing more than that. And we have Crowd. Crowd is looking good. That dip back was bought on a lot of volume, so already it looks like it's priced in from earnings perspective, the move that already happened. So when this kind of thing happens, so typically there is a very good chance that it might end up flat into the earnings. So the implied move is $20. So 382 to 302. How it aligns? See, the resistance at 302 aligns with the earnings move. So what you need to understand is um, the technicals and support and resistance is the price is adjusting itself into the earnings week, so that on a positive move it can hit that resistance level, right? So that's what we can say when you say that the implied move is 20 and there is resistance at exactly the $20 from now, right? So to the downside it might take to 260s, or I would say this level from February should be a support on a pullback. Yeah. Looks like 302 resistance and 250 support in that range. Depending on whether you're bullish or not. Weekly, it already kind of moved to the upper Bollinger Band, so I don't see any. further upside move potential unless the earnings is super good. Uh, but the fact that there is this much volume and accumulation might prevent it from falling. So iron condor would be best in a crowd. OKTA. OKTA, so this I was just looking at it because it came up in the earnings scan. So now when we look at it, there is this strong downtrend that is established, and there is a very good possibility of it retesting that level. So we should at least, this is a old one, so we should at least, we can play until it hits that 277 level, right? So the implied move is around $14. So from 262, we are talking about 276 ish, right? Which exactly collides with that one. So that's again power of technical analysis, right? So everything is aligning it to move towards that resistance as part of the implied move. To the downside, it might be visiting 250s again, which is a very thick cluster of supports here. So yep, 275 to the upside and 250 as support, Octa. And the last one that we would like to do is CHWY. Yeah, so no trend as such, very choppy trade. I'll skip this for now. I'm not even looking at them. There is no trend. I mean, see the volume is dying, right? So let's not discuss about that. So that concludes the earnings analysis, what happened last week and what happened this week. Hope that was helpful. Thank you. See you in the next video.